Capítulo 9. Yo creo que es el final ya, ¿no? El desenlace, eso es.
Detective, you have spent more time making us sit and wait for you than anything else.
Madame Van den Bosch, if you think I have spent my time focused on anything besides uncovering the Major's killer, you are sorely mistaken.
I'm sure you will be eager to share your findings with us then.
All in good time, Madame. Firstly, to understand the truth of what has occurred this weekend, one must know the timeline of events that not only preceded the Major's death, but succeeded.
We are all well aware of what happened before, Detective. You can save your breath.
You are only aware of what the guilty parties wanted you to believe, but now I shall apprise you to the true events. The reason for us all being here, you know. The altercation between Monsieur Demire and the Major, you know. The body of Monsieur Hagen was found while we were all sat enjoying a most delicious meal. That you also know. But what was kept from us all was that his body lay on the study floor for far longer than was thought.
It was that servant. She found him.
S'il te plaît, monsieur. It was indeed young Inga that found the Major's body lying lifeless in the study.
So it was her.
Monsieur, I will not allow for any further interruptions. I return to the Major's body. If we are to believe the scene that we were presented with, the Major must have been killed during the first course of our meal, a meal that none of you left, even for a moment. Speaking in the evening, you all confirmed one another's alibis, and although there was doubt in the validity of some, I confirmed that they were indeed all true. What I could not understand was how a man came to be found dead, and every guest accounted for at the time of death. That is until I questioned the latter. Monsieur Beckers, I shall now allow you to speak. You saw the Major smoking a cigar in the snow. Is that true?
It is.
False. You saw what you were meant to see. Someone in the Major's coat standing outside, giving the illusion that the Major was still very much alive. Monsieur da Silva, on the afternoon of the Major's death, do you recall hearing a telephone ring?
Now that you mention it, I have not heard a single ring all weekend.
Correct. The telephone lines have been down for the duration of our stay, meaning the telephone call that was received and promptly directed to the Major's study was yet another act of trickery and deceit. But it did not end there. When I entered the study for the first time, it was obvious someone had already been there and falsified the scene to stage a burglary and clear away important evidence, including the murder weapon. What followed was an investigation that had already been hindered. But even those lengths were not enough to derail me for long.
I think we have all had enough of your self-praise, Detective. Perhaps you would like to tell us who killed him now?
Madame, as I'm sure you would expect, it is not as simple as that. What many of you do not know is the discussion that was had between the Major and Monsieur Beckers earlier that day.
What has that got to do with anything? I told you I didn't kill him.
That I know to be true. What you do not know is that it was not only his ears that heard your spoken words.
I hope you are not implying I had something to do with it.
No, Madame, there was another. Mademoiselle Elisabeth. You are all aware that the Major was hired by Monsieur da Silva to front the security during the workers' strikes. What very few of you know is that it was the Major's order that instigated the vicious attacks on those unarmed men and resulted in numerous deaths, including Mademoiselle Elisabeth's fiancé, Luc. Monsieur Beckers confronted the Major, declaring that he was to hand himself in. That is what Mademoiselle Elisabeth overheard. Now, knowing the truth, she waited until the Major was away from his study. After he stepped outside following the confrontation with Monsieur Demire's fist, It looked to be the perfect opportunity, or so she thought. The Major returned and found her looking for the proof she required to hand him over to the authorities.
If the maid bumped him off, why hasn't she been arrested?
The events that followed in the study are not those of a cold-blooded murder, but one of a young girl that had no other option but to protect her own life.
Sounds to me, Detective, like you have taken a shine to this young girl and would rather protest her innocence than arrest her for murder, the crime she has committed.
Jeez, this is gonna make for a juicy story.
Mademoiselle, I ask you this. You have seen the Major's anger before, oui?
What if I have?
How do you think he would have reacted if someone was to find proof that he had committed a terrible act, and that if made public, would surely result in his incarceration? Exactement.
It is quite the story you have told, Detective, but all I have heard is that Elizabeth overheard a conversation blaming the Major for her fiancé's death, and she murdered him in revenge. A servant killing a man that is as revered as he was. She will face the noose.
I am not denying that a man has lost his life, but it is not the crime of murder that you all believe. While the Major did not deserve to die in such a way, it was his actions towards Mademoiselle Elizabeth that drove her to defend herself in any way she could. Mademoiselle Elizabeth will be punished, but we will let the law decide the severity of her punishment.
She has played you like a fiddle, Detective, acting the innocent victim. She will be arrested and hanged for her crime, like every other cold-blooded killer.
Here.
Give her what she deserves.
The girl has got to pay for what she's done.
Vale, perdonad que me había puesto el mute. Yo total, no tenía nada que hablar. He explicado todo lo que ha sucedido en el estudio del comandante con toda la claridad posible, pero no hay manera. Se ve que han olvidado sus propios sentimientos hacia el comandante, los crímenes tan terribles que ha cometido y cómo los trató de una forma u otra. Es curioso, ¿eh? No puedo permitir que los que aquí presentes ejerzan una influencia negativa en la sentencia de Mademoiselle Elizabeth. Debo intentar hacerles ver que sus acciones del pasado han influido en estas circunstancias tan desafortunadas y en la pérdida de tantas vidas. Quizá convenga que les recuerde su implicación en la huelga de los trabajadores y los disturbios resultantes.
Those of you that are calling for the hanging of Mademoiselle Elizabeth, have you forgotten the roles you played? Your actions have been far from innocent.
Look, Detective, I see where you are
tengo que
going with
enfrentarme
this,
a cada
but it's
uno.
not going to work. So maybe the strikes were down to De Silva and Beckers. But don't try and drag me into their mistakes.
Mademoiselle Conrad, if you are so confident of your innocence, perhaps we should begin with you.
Esto me parece ya un poco, entre comillas, tonto, ¿no? Pero bueno, porque ya está descubierto todo. Pero es en plan... el enfrentamiento real es contra ellos, porque ellos estaban a malas con el comandante, pero como al final el comandante era uno de ellos, aunque les cayera mal, no tienen problema. Es una mujer fuerte y tozuda y sabe cómo desviar las preguntas. Quizá me convenga usar un enfoque más agresivo.
You don't need to imply it's only me that does. Ask any of my journalists, they'll say the same.
Even if in the process people are hurt?
Ves compañeros por delante.
You knew the situation surrounding the strikes, and only sought to swell the anger in people and create further chaos. Mademoiselle, you so often have something to say. Now is not the time for silence.
You really are delusional.
Maybe you should just keep your theories and claims to yourself.
No sabía que existiesen profesiones en las que se sacrifica la vida a cambio de beneficios.
Talking of sacrificing lives, have you forgotten what you have done?
No creerá de verdad que existe justificación para sus acciones.
You know what it's like to get your hands dirty, Detective. You can't expect others not to do the same.
Vaya hombre.
Mademoiselle, I do not have time for your excuses. Do you wish to state your direct involvement, or should I?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Poirot, but I have done nothing wrong. I must say, though, you certainly put your heart and soul into it. All that matters is what happened in that room, and that...
Now is the time to admit your lapse of judgment. You allowed Mademoiselle Conrad to manipulate you like...
Ridiculous. I told you already we spoke about the strikes, but she hardly had the authority to make me do anything.
Ahora tengo que ir con cada uno y el rollo está que cada uno... O sea, tú fíjate, no puedo volver para atrás con lo de Conrad. He fallado. Curioso. Ahora lo que me estoy dando cuenta es que el juego lo que nos está diciendo aquí, es, te lo he dado todo muy sencillo, pero la parte final te lo tienes que currar tú. De tal forma de que si fallamos en estos desafíos, ¿qué va a ocurrir? Que no tenemos una segunda oportunidad. Y la sensación que me da con Conrad hemos fallado, con Jackie hemos fallado. Si fallamos con más gente, supongo que a lo mejor hay un final. Y si acertamos, o sea, no sé si esto es en plan conseguir que todos se pongan a favor o que haya mayoría. Porque a lo mejor si es así, a lo mejor con eso es suficiente. Pero lo que da a entender es que hay dos finales. Uno en el cual todos se ponen en contra de Elizabeth y otro en el que a lo mejor hay algo de empatía. Bueno, vamos a seguir con Hugo. Ayer Monsieur Beckers admitió su mala gestión de las protestas y los disturbios, pero parece que solo lo hizo de puertas para adentro. Quizá no le guste airear sus asuntos en público, pero si debo hacerlo para convencerle, no me temblará la mano. Cínico. ¿De verdad no se le pasó por la cabeza que una huelga pudiera derivar en actos violentos que pusieran en peligro a sus hombres? Directo, usted es el líder de los sindicalistas y se dejó mangonear por alguien que ni pinchaba ni cortaba las negociaciones. A ver esto.
This is ridiculous. It was a peaceful strike. We only wanted what was deserved. Surely you do not think I sought to worsen the situation?
Pues lo hemos hecho mal porque ha sido malo.
Monsieur Beckers, you have taken the words from my mouth.
Jackie was documenting everything to do with the strikes. She wanted our story to be heard and wanted to know how I was handling the negotiations.
And they were handled by yourself?
Naturally. If I cannot handle simple negotiations, I am not fit to be in the position I am in.
Contundente. Vamos, el Conrad lo manipuló e influenció todas sus decisiones. Sarcástico. ¿Usted se enorgullece mucho de su labor? ¿Se siente orgulloso de las decisiones que tomó durante las protestas? Vamos con contundente, a ver.
No, it wasn't like that.
Jolines, tío. Otra vez me he vuelto a equivocar. Se equivoca.
This is not a tale that has been created. The facts I speak came directly from your mouth yesterday. Why is it?
Nothing is ever simple, detective. I'm sure you understand that better than anyone.
Jolines. Monsieur Beckers, dejes de fastuosidades. Ha llegado el momento de revelar la verdad. Usted da la cara por los oprimidos. ¿No irá a permitir que otra persona desfavorecida caiga víctima de la discriminación social? Este podría ser bueno.
You're right,
Bien.
detective. I have tried so hard to deny my part, but I know only too well that my decisions led to the death of those men.
Ostras, en el último suspiro, ¿eh? Tenemos como 3 rounds, pero si ganamos el último, pasamos. Bueno.
I know I cannot excuse what I've done. I just want you all to know that I am not a hateful or malicious man. I only wanted to prove that I was the right man. I have lived in other shadows for so long. I thought I would be able to finally step into the light and be the one that everyone remembered, not forgot.
Me parece a mí que nos lo han puesto un poco sencillo. En los desafíos anteriores, cuando acertabas una vez pero fallabas otra o dos, te lo daban como nulo. Pero aquí, fijaos que hemos fallado 2 veces y al final ha valido. La última revalida ha valido.
Monsieur da Silva offered me a deal and I turned it down. I thought I was doing right by the workers, but it was only myself.
What more proof do you need? He said it himself. I made a generous offer to reach a resolution, and he turned his nose up at it.
It was not that simple, though. Oui, an offer was made, But Monsieur Beckers and the workers would never have been forced into that position had their working conditions been satisfactory to begin with.
This is outrageous! Do you plan on blaming everyone for doing their jobs?
Aunque Monsieur iba a ser sincero conmigo, se puso a la defensiva cuando abordamos el tema de la extorsión, y para colmo se trató de una conversación privada entre bambalinas. Dudo mucho que hable con la misma libertad delante de los invitados. Voy a tener que emplearme a fondo para que vuelva a confesar sus errores. Si usted se limita a hacer su trabajo y tratar bien a sus trabajadores, no habría tenido que salir a la calle a reivindicar sus derechos. Yo jamás he escuchado una justificación más patética. Los problemas los origina usted y su mala toma de decisiones.
It may be a big deal to you, but I am used to workers not being happy with something. And most of the time, that unhappiness is directed at me. When you're in charge of your own factory, you'll understand. I handle the situation the best I could. If you think otherwise, maybe you have proved us all right, that you aren't the great detective you claim to be.
Orgulloso. Todo lo que afirmó se sostiene en hechos y verdades. Todo lo que afirmo se sostiene en hechos y verdades. Amenazador. El deseo de ocultar los secretos propios es una fuerza poderosa. Me pregunto cuánto tardará en quebrarse la suya. ¿Está dispuesto a pagar un chantajista anónimo que le acusaba de lo mismo? Sin rodeos.
You said it. Anonymous. I don't know them, and it doesn't sound like they know me. When you have something people want, money, they will do anything, including constructing lies to get their hands on it.
Monsieur da Silva, you seem to have forgotten our previous conversations.
I recall them just fine, thank you. A police officer trying to manipulate facts to fit his own agenda. Shocking.
He perdido. Las denuncias por explotación por parte de sus trabajadores y el hecho de que contratara a la milicia son hechos que me he inventado yo para que cuadren con mis deducciones. El acuerdo que firmó con el comandante prendió la llama que iniciaron las revueltas. Venga, va, contundente.
Is that what you plan to do? Accuse us all of something until we feel enough guilt that we agree to allow the girl to walk free.
Otro que he perdido.
The events that led to the Major's murder are not as simple as you have tried to convince yourself. I have uncovered what initiated both the murder of your workers and of the Major. It is...
Apparently anyone can become a detective now. I really don't know how you gained your title.
Through order and...
Order? There's no order in beating down who you consider suspects until they have no other option but to admit something, guilty or not.
Monsieur da Silva, you have stood steadfast, and your opinion on your involvement has not wavered.
Detective, you would do well not to anger my friend.
Lo llevo fatal.
It was not my intention. I only want those responsible to be held accountable for their actions. The Major's death does not fall on one person alone. Does your position on Mademoiselle Elizabeth's guilt remain the same?
Even after all your attempts, Detective, Felix was still murdered. Self-defense or not, she chose to hide what she had done because she knew what she...
It was not choice to hide anything, madame. If in her position, I ask, what would you have done? The Major has already furiously thrown an object at you, barely missing your head, and now has hold of your arm.
¿Gritar?
I wouldn't have driven a knife into him, that I can tell you for sure. She is no fool. She intended to kill, not to defend.
Madame de Bosch va a ser un hueso más duro de roer, pero mi método ya funcionó con ella una vez. Si pretendo darle a entender que a Mademoiselle no le quedó más opción que actuar como lo hizo, debo convencerla de que el comandante provocó tanto la situación como el trágico desenlace. Por lo que me han contado los invitados, no es la primera vez que el comandante se pone violento. Usted era la persona más cercana al comandante, debe conocer bien sus arrebatos violentos. Yo qué sé. Insinuar, Franco.
He was a passionate man. Sometimes conversations and arguments turned heated, yes.
He perdido.
So, even you confirm he had a history of aggression.
Directo. Al comandante lo expulsaron del ejército británico por actos deshonrosos. ¿Sabe cuáles? Ha representado muy bien el papel de amigo atento y cariñoso, pero en eso consistió todo, en una representación. Venga, va, directo.
I'm sure that is none of my business. Likewise, it is none of yours.
Madre mía.
The Major shot and killed a number of unarmed prisoners as they were bound and terrified, posing no threat. His actions are unforgivable and should not be defended by anyone.
You judge him so harshly, but I return the question. What would you have done in his position? He had made mistakes. I will not deny that. In those moments when a decision had to be made, it fell to him, and he did what he saw fit.
Madre mía. Tomar una mala decisión una vez se trata de un error. Hacerlo 2 veces constituye ya una elección. Empático. ¿Eso justifica que la maltratara usted? Incrédulo. El comandante dio la orden de que atacaran a trabajadores desarmados. ¿De verdad lo justifica? ¡Bum! No está mal. Bueno.
S'il te plaît, madame. I ask that you consider everything you know of the Major carefully.
Claro, había que centrarse en ella. Es que yo también soy una...
My friend has been murdered in cold blood, and you have the gall to ask me to save her?
Flipante.
I will see to it that your superiors know of your crooked tendencies and wavering morals. Elizabeth will hang for this. There is no more a fitting punishment for her crime.
Pues hemos perdido.
I knew that you had a cold heart, but never would I have expected to see you turn on a young girl so cruelly.
Excuse me?
She may have been the one that held the knife, but look at the monster that stood before her. It could not be clearer the type of man... No, I shall refrain from offending men everywhere. The type of creature that he was. He bribed, he extorted, he murdered. And yet when he attacks a young girl and she does us a favor and stops him for good, she is punished.
Fíjate.
I'm sorry, Margot, but I am struggling to understand why you have involved yourself in this affair.
Because that girl does not deserve your judgment. You should be ashamed of yourself. You all should be for allowing this to happen.
Countess, I have talked at length of the Major's death, but not the reason for my invitation in the first place. When I last gathered you all together, I spoke of a blackmail ring that was rife in the area, and then of the letter that the Major had received. Mademoiselle Angeline requested my help personally after she received such a letter threatening her family name. She felt I was the only one that could uncover the truth. And uncover the truth I have.
Get on with it, detective. Who dared try and extort my family and then have the gall to allow me to welcome them into my home?
If it was not for the honesty of a young servant, I would perhaps still be looking for the
For goodness sake, it was me.
Buah.
Margot, how could you?
While it looked as though the Countess was helping the young women at the shelter, she was in fact only finding them positions of employment in wealthy homes to gather information on them and learn secrets that she would ultimately be able to use against them. Monsieur da Silva fell victim to her network of moles and was in turn blackmailed. It was quite the prosperous setup you had, knowing that they would not be prepared to lose their social standing if a secret was to find its way from where it had been hidden for so long.
That cannot be true, Margot. How could you do such a cruel thing?
That is rich, coming from you.
You are one of my oldest friends.
High and mighty, Madame van den Bosch. You think you can do what you wish when you wish it and there will be no repercussions. You are as bad as all of them.
Vaya.
If I do not get a straight answer out of you, I will march you to the police station myself.
I'm surprised it took the Major this long to start living with you. He must have been on the edge for some time.
How dare you speak to me like that? In my own home.
A home you share with the father of your daughter for so many years, and she still remains none the wiser.
Buah.
You have no right.
Se ha matado.
Angeline? Have you heard what she has admitted to? She is merely trying to make herself...
Is what she says true? Felix, he was my father? That is the secret that the letter was talking about, isn't it? You told me that we had nothing to hide. Detective Poirot, were you aware of this?
Oui, mademoiselle. But it was not my place to repeat.
I don't understand. What about father?
Your maman betrayed the love of a good, honest man and played away behind his back, and then kept it hidden for all these years like a lady of the night with her client list.
You will say no more. Angeline, I...
Did Felix know?
This is not an appropriate conversation.
He knew, dear girl. He knew the whole time. It is only dear Edwin that was blind to their deceit.
You will not talk of him like that. You will not talk of him at all.
If I don't, who will? You never deserved him. You don't even deserve the memory of him.
Vaya.
Countess, there is something that you still have not explained.
What more is there for her to say?
How long were you in love with the Viscount for?
Dios, ostras. Esto sí no lo sabía.
Margot? Is that true?
We were destined to be together. And then you turned up. And I was all but forgotten about.
Esto no lo sabía.
But you were nothing more than friends.
No.
And you made sure of that, didn't you? From the day you arrived, it was all about what you wanted and what you had to do to get it. You didn't consider Edwin at all. He was just a purse to you.
I loved my husband, and I miss him every day.
Loved him enough to stray?
Toma ya.
Both of you, no more.
Please, Angeline, let me explain.
Maman, I do not wish to hear anything else from you.
Not even your own daughter wants to hear your lies anymore. Cassandra van den Bosch, all alone.
How dare you!
A que se pelean.
While I feel a sense of satisfaction and pride in solving both cases, there is still a part of me that is reluctant to revel in triumph. I am content with the unmasking of Comtesse de Vos as the blackmailer, and knowing that she will pay for her crimes. But it is the justice for Mademoiselle Elizabeth that worries me. She will stand in a court of law, and I can only hope that they can see she acted in self-defense. I must trust that our legal system and justice will prevail, and a fair sentencing will be given. In protecting her own life, she took the life of another. Perhaps the guilt she must live with is a greater punishment than any sentence she can receive.
Y se acabó.
Comtesse de Vos was taken from Nemozinet House in cuffs and placed under arrest. Although she initially tried to plead her innocence, Inga, along with a number of other girls that the Comtesse had found employment for, came forward and made full statements. She was charged with 5 counts of blackmail and extortion and sent to a house of corrections, where she will have a new life to become accustomed to. Monsieur Sterling and Mademoiselle Rihanna were also reprimanded for their participation. While they may not be facing time in prison, tampering with a crime scene and obstruction of a police investigation are certainly not something that houses and new employers will look positively on. Mademoiselle Angeline finally became Madame Demire, and together they took up residence in England, where Monsieur Demire continues to support and fight for fairness and equality in London. I am happy to say that we have remained in contact, and Madame Demire has become a regular correspondent of mine, and the latest joyous news is that they are expecting a child of their own. After Madame van den Bosch's secret was revealed to the world, her position in the social hierarchy was no more, disappearing in a moment. While she still resides in Belgium, I believe she has had to adapt to a far more modest way of life. A humbling experience for her, I am sure. Madame Demire has not mentioned her maman in a single letter. After the discovery of her real father and how she had been lied to for so many years, I am not surprised if her departure from Belgium was somewhat an act of separation from her maman. Mademoiselle Conrad left Nemozinet House the same way she entered, confident in herself and audacious in her opinions. Her report of the Major's murder at the house and the surrounding blackmails became one of the most talked about stories of the year. While there were certain details of her own involvement that did not make it to print, she was really quite complimentary about the detective at the heart of the case.
Anda.
Monsieur da Silva tried to continue in his position as factory owner and business entrepreneur, but after his accounts and business dealings were investigated following the details of his blackmail being made public in Mademoiselle Conrad's article, his illustrious business empire began to crumble and is now facing an international corporate investigation. Monsieur Becker stepped down from his position as union leader, accepting that he was no longer fit to represent the workforce that, in his words, he had let down on a scale of unmeasurable proportion. Although he is no longer the voice of the workers, he continues to support them from behind the scenes. Monsieur Zachariah and his brother made amends, and returning to his family home, and after sobering up, he was able to find the help that he required. I understand that he is now helping fellow soldiers with similar conditions. And Mademoiselle Elizabeth. She stood before a court and was found guilty of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to time in a female correctional house on the outskirts of the city. Alone in a foreign country with no friends or family for support, it will certainly be a hard life for her there. Her mental and physical strength will surely be tested to their limits, but she could not go unpunished. Without repercussions, we would become a society of animals.
Vaya. ¿Es posible que a lo mejor esta mujer salga indemne? No sé yo.
The death of Elizabeth's beloved Luc has been at the center of everything. Had those in positions to help not acted with only themselves in mind, perhaps he would still be alive today, and the Major would have paid the price for his own crimes in the eyes of the law, not at the blade of a knife. The blood of Major Felix Egan will remain on Elizabeth's hands. A stain that wherever she is and whatever she may do, she will never be able to wash clean. However, it will remain as a reminder to not only her, but all of us, of what we as human beings are capable of to protect ourselves. We all have something that may be considered shameful or sinful, and it is how we deal with it that shows our true character. Those involved in the riots, the workers' deaths, and the Major's killing believed themselves to be untouchable. Whether it was from their social standing or their confidence in themselves, they learned that everyone is accountable for their actions. There is no exemption because of the suit you wear or the money in your bank account. There is no price to a man's life. It cannot be bought or traded or discarded. No man is better than another, including Detective Hercule Poirot.
Bueno, pues hasta aquí este Hércules Poirot primeros casos. Un juego que, como podéis comprobar, está distribuido por Microids, que siempre suele apostar mucho por las aventuras gráficas. Así que lo que vamos a hacer ahora es disfrutar de los créditos, que son las personas que han hecho posible este juego, y luego después finalizamos con las conclusiones finales. Vale, pues muy bien. Vistos los... Voy a bajar un poquito la música. Mejor. Así estoy más tranquilo para poder hacer las últimas conclusiones, porque la música a veces se sube un montón. Bueno, pues un Hércules Poirot, un juego que va un poquito en la misma línea del IBC Murders, en el que tenemos una especie de palacio mental, en el que vamos haciendo conexiones, etc. Sencillo en el sentido de que se emplaza en dos únicas ubicaciones y ya está. Y luego después es un juego que es muy lineal, porque aunque es cierto que hay momentos en los que hay ciertas preguntas que haces y que cierran, o sea, haces una pregunta y a lo mejor dependiendo la pregunta que sea, a veces el personaje puede ser que no quiere hablar más, pero el momento en el que ya empieza la investigación se acabó. Cuando empieza la investigación puedes hacer todas las preguntas que quieras, y luego los desafíos hasta incluso son, y no es que sean sencillos, sino porque es prueba y error, y si fallas puedes volver a hacerlo otra vez. O sea que el juego en ese sentido es lineal completamente y te lleva y te evoca a este enfrentamiento final con los peces gordos, que es como una especie de cura de humildad para que ellos se pongan en la piel de Elizabeth y digan, bueno, venga, va, vamos a empatizar con ella y vamos a ayudarla a que no, claro, porque el hecho de que ellos quieran que vaya a la horca hace mucho, ¿no? Por su posición social, ¿no? Pero si al final es justo lo contrario, si ellos abogan porque fue en defensa propia, entonces hay más posibilidades de que ella no muera. Entonces, bueno, el juego, durante lo que hemos comentado anteriormente, a lo largo del juego hemos tenido esos enfrentamientos que nos ha servido un poquito de tutorial y sobre todo de saber, de darle un poquito de chicha al juego, porque en realidad las conversaciones son conversaciones que están hechas prácticamente, no tienes tú que inventarte mucho más. Y luego los nodos o esa especie de roscos, como le llamo yo, al final cuando vas fallando varias veces, luego después te echa una mano, ¿no? Eso lo puedes desactivar, que ahora me he dado cuenta que es algo que puedes desactivar en las opciones. Pistas de deducción, ¿ver? Desactivar. Se pueden activar o desactivar. Entonces si las desactivas, ya entonces te quedas ahí perenne sin saber exactamente por dónde tirar y probando todas las opciones. Eso es. Que bueno, es una forma de darle un poquito más, de subir la dificultad al juego. Eso es una realidad. Pero claro, como este es un juego que yo lo estaba publicando en YouTube, aquí con vosotros, pues tampoco quería... Hubo un par de momentos en los que dije yo, pues a lo mejor si lo quito, sube el nivel de dificultad, pero claro, entonces a lo mejor sería un poquito más tedioso, porque tendría que estar mucho más rato buscando la conexión correcta. Así que bueno, lo hemos dejado así, pero para una partida en la que sea uno solo, vosotros en vuestra casa, pues le podéis dar ese punto de handicap, que sería eliminando las pistas de deducción, que no nos las sople. En fin, yo creo que el enfrentamiento final que hemos tenido con toda la trupe de la Alta Alcurnia, pues ha sido eso, una forma de decir, mira, puedes decidir si se ponen a favor o en contra de Elizabeth, y también si ellos van a... si eso puede ser que a lo mejor dependa el resultado final del juicio con Elizabeth. Aquí se nos ha arrojado un final, no tengo ni idea si tiene más finales, pero bueno, se ha arrojado un final en el que sufre, pero parece ser que no muere. No muere. Pero la vida va a ser dura, porque va a estar en una cárcel, tal, e incluso hasta Hércules Poirot da por hecho de que tiene que ser así, o sea, como diciendo, mira, es lo que hay, salvas la vida, pero es que también tienes que... no se puede justificar tus actos, porque tú te cargaste al comandante. Aunque bueno, son circunstancias muy especiales, sin lugar a dudas, y tampoco nos tenemos que meter en lo que propiamente es el hecho de defenderse cuando una persona te está atacando y tal, nada, porque hay que verlo también en retrospectiva, la época en la cual se emplaza el juego y cómo la servidumbre y todos aquellos que son de un nivel social muy bajo pues lo tienen muy complicado. Y ahí visteis el ejemplo de Floret, como no siendo ya culpable finalmente la llevaron a la cárcel y al final pues perdió el trabajo. Bueno, evidentemente perdió el trabajo y también pues fue un desastre para ella. Bueno, pues un poquito esa es la idea. Lo que tiene que ver el juego en sí gráficamente y todo lo demás, bueno, pues es lo que hay, y tampoco es un juego para que le demos muchas más vueltas en ese aspecto. Y sí que es cierto que hay momentos en los cuales pega un poco de bajón, los giros argumentales ayudan bastante, el tema de que, lo del tema de las extorsiones, por ejemplo, lo de Angelina, que Félix era hijo suyo, es algo que se va, como que se va viendo, ¿no? Un poquito. Pero bueno, lo de Margaus, por ejemplo, me ha gustado mucho, porque eso era algo que no me esperaba. No me esperaba para nada que Margaus fuera la chantajista y que tuviera una red de espías con las muchachas. O sea que bueno, tiene unas cositas que bien, te dan ahí un puntito para que no te desconectes. Porque por ejemplo en la revisión de las habitaciones ha sido un momento en el que para mí ha sido un poquito más tedioso. Y me ha recordado otros juegos como por ejemplo el Asesinato en Orient Express, que seguramente también recordaréis que teníamos que ir varias veces a los departamentos del tren y revisar cosas, y habían cosas que en un primer momento no eran interactuables, pero luego después sí. Y aquí pasa exactamente lo mismo. En un primer momento hay cosas que no son interactuables, pero luego después sí. En fin, eso hasta cierto punto es una ayuda. Y una excusa para alargar el juego también. Pero bueno, es una ayuda también. Es una ayuda porque así entonces te centras en lo que ves cada momento y en cada parte, y cuando es necesario ya está. No podemos decir que es una aventura gráfica clásica, ni mucho menos, porque no tenemos ningún tipo de inventario, no hay puzzles, no hay nada de nada. Es el puzzle propiamente dicho, es el que está en nuestra cabeza y ya está. Y esto es lo moderno, juegos así narrativos, y este es narrativo puro y duro. Así que evidentemente no es para cualquier tipo de jugador, ¿no? Este es un nicho muy, muy concreto. Pero en ese sentido estoy encantado con que Microids siga apostando por este tipo de juegos, de verdad. Es muy bonito que Microids apueste por este tipo de juegos, demostrando que la aventura gráfica se resiste a desaparecer, o por lo menos evolucione y que siga existiendo, ¿verdad? Muy bien, jóvenes, pues nada, estas son mis conclusiones finales. No sé vosotros qué os ha parecido, el final, cualquier cosita, pues como siempre me la podéis comentar, dejadlo en comentarios. Ahora ya sé que podéis despotricar y dejar vuestros spoilers y lo que queráis comentar, con respeto por supuesto. Y si os ha gustado esta serie, pues dadle un pequeño like y suscribiros si no lo habéis hecho hasta el momento. Ha sido un placer. Muchísimas gracias por pasar por aquí y recordad que esta es vuestra casa. Juegos Perdidos. Cuidaros mucho. Hasta más ver.